Hey guys, this is Justin and Joel.
What up?
With Knock on Wood Custom. We're doing a follow-up video. We had a lot of questions from our epoxy live shoot from the other day, and we just want to touch on some basics, some pretty fundamental epoxy needs. So first, we're going to start with how do you tape up voids and holes or bug damage. So we're going to take you over to our pecan 12-foot oversized dinner table that we're working on right now that has some pretty nasty voids, and we're going to show you from taping it up all the way to pouring and mixing epoxy to filling those little voids, as well as a final pour, a flood coat on one of our black walnut pieces.
I think we had a question about inclusions this morning, didn't we?
Yeah.
About wormholes and.
Yeah, we had a message from a guy in West Africa, an amazing guy. He had a local piece of wood that he was working with, and it had bug damage. And he was curious, what do I do with it? Do I need to get crazy? Do I need to stabilize it? Should I just pour a bunch of epoxy on it? So we're going to hopefully answer some of those questions for everybody. Follow me. So right now we're working with this pecan. This was all harvested in Oklahoma. And as you can see, we've got some inclusions in here. Personally, this is one of the reasons that we enjoy live edge wood. You don't get that from Lowe's lumber. So we like to include a lot of those beauty pieces. This is one of the ones that we'll be pouring today. It's a pretty simple inclusion, or not an inclusion, I'm sorry, but a void. And we want to start with tape up. So when I work with these voids or inclusions, we want to tape the bottom side. I've seen actually people tape the top as well, so that way your pour is a little more even on the top. You can do this either way. The point to this is with the tape, you don't want to be really skimpy. You don't want to buy cheap tape. You're just going to end up wasting epoxy, which definitely costs more than tape. So what we suggest is the Scotch shipping, like the heavy duty clear tape. I don't like the brown packing tape. It doesn't seem to hold. Don't use Gorilla tape. Don't use electrical tape. That stuff, for whatever reason, just doesn't hold up to the heat of the epoxy when it starts to cure. So this is a piece that we've already done. It's got tape pretty much all over it on the back side, the bottom side. We're going to do the same with this piece. We're going to get it flipped over for you, and we're going to tape it up. If you guys have any questions as we go forward with this and you see something that we're doing, feel free to just add it into the comments. I'm waiting on Joel to get back over here so he can hold this so I can tape this up for you guys. I'm going to hand the camera off, my shaky hands. So we're going to tape up this void. Very pretty.
Top side. Tape your bottom side.
As you can see, it's a lot more expansive on the bottom.
Are you overlapping that?
I am. I didn't think about it. You guys might not be able to see that, but I'm actually overlapping these by about half. And then I'm extending beyond all of the voids quite a bit. because that epoxy is going to mess with the adhesive of the tape, and you'll probably have a little bit of epoxy that runs out through the bottom that you're going to have to deal with. Once you pull the tape off, you may have to sand it down.
When you do the general epoxy, it actually heats up. So lots of tape or it'll seep right through it.
Get my tape to work.
Be generous with the tape because you never know where you're going to have a hole.
Yeah, the littlest, I mean, the smallest, if you deal with spalted woods, they're really porous sometimes, and you get these like little holes from ants, or you'll get some kind of sculpting. It's very weird to think that that one small hole will just cause a lot of problems. Realistically, even if it's something tiny, put tape over it. Like I said, this is less...
What kind of tape are you using?
This is Scotch. This is the shipping heavy-duty tape. This is less expensive than epoxy. Epoxy is pretty pricey, and it can be, and especially when you find it all over the floor. So just use tape.
Rebecca wants to know, what are you making?
What am I making? This is a 12-foot oversized pecan dining table. It's massive. It's huge. So instead of crafting the full table and then trying to put epoxy and flipping things over, this is actually made out of 7 different pieces.
Let's show them the long ones. This is a long one here. It's a 6-footer.
It's a big 6-foot section. They're right at 13.5 inches wide. And they all to go together with loose tenons. I like to double up my tape where the void is really big, because that's probably where I'm going to get the most sagging from the material and the heat of the epoxy. So I kind of do these cross patterns to make sure I structurally am a little more, have more integrity. All right, so this guy, this hole on the other side is ready to go. So we're going to take this into our finish room.
Let's take a journey.
So we're going to come back and fill this here in a second, but first what we want to do is show you guys our mixing process. Additionally, I want to point out the guy behind you. That's our black walnut piece that we're going to be doing a flood coat on today. As you can see, it's scuffed up. We've actually gone back and sanded our seal coats so that we have a nice smooth surface for when we put the flood coats on.
We had a question about sandpaper grit as far as when you're sanding epoxy. And as you can see, there's some scratches in it that are heavily noticeable, but as soon as you pour a flood coat on that, it fills all those voids and looks really nice.
And we'll show that, guys, in just a moment. First, we're going to fill these voids.
So here's the epoxy we're using. East Coast resin. So 1-to-1.
We did have questions about the 1-to-1 versus a 2-to-1 ratio, so I'm going to take a second to explain it. 1-to-1 ratio, what that means is you've got resin, the epoxy resin, and then you've got hardener. So it's the ratio of the epoxy resin to the hardener. In this case, it's a 1-to-1 ratio. So if I have 1 ounce of epoxy resin, I've got 1 ounce of the hardener.
Jerry had a question.
Shoot.
He said, why don't you put a flat board or something solid under the void in the board to prevent sagging with the tape?
I can. That's an absolute possibility if that's something you like to do. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
In my opinion, I don't like boards touching my voids, because if for whatever reason I have epoxy seep out, that epoxy is actually going to connect the two pieces of wood.
It'll bond it.
Yeah, it's going to bond it just like anything else.
If your void is that big, you really shouldn't be pouring that much epoxy in it to
Correct.
start with. So
we had some pieces of Osage Orange that had massive issues, and we actually went with what is that stuff?
fiberglass.
Fiberglass. So we actually built.
Be
like
ready
you-
for a mess.
Yeah, we built like basically a concrete barrier, the same idea like a form around these. But to be honest, it was pretty overwhelming as far as an undertaking. So if you want, you can use wood. You can use, I guess, like the PEX plastic. You could do that. Tape is just the simplest. It peels right off. The epoxy doesn't adhere to it. So there's a lot less problems. If there is a little sag, yeah, I get it. You know, you're probably out 75 cents of epoxy.
And a little elbow grease.
Yeah, and you belt sand it. It's on the bottom. You know, you have issues. But realistically, in woodwork, that's what we do, right? You create a problem, fix the problem. So in this case, if you do come across that, hopefully you don't, there's a couple different ways you could solve it. I like the tape and the overlapping method because it reduces that sag, and I usually don't have that. Plus, when I pour my first fill for this void, you're not going to fill the whole void. Like, those boards are an inch and a quarter.
Will probably be between an eighth or a quarter inch.
Yeah, so depending on the epoxy brand that you use, they tell you, hey, only pour 1/16 of an inch. Only pour 1/4 of an inch. The reason why is if you pour too thick, when the epoxy starts to cure and it hardens, the heat will actually create breaks and cracks
Like
and
fissures.
Yeah, the fissures. So it's not very beneficial if you're trying to get a nice clean pour. So realistically, we're going to do a really small amount this time. I'm going to show you these cups. Again, they're from autobodynow.com. These are just their 32-ounce mixing cups. I think they make larger ones. I'm not 100% sure. But you can buy them in the hundreds. And if you do epoxy, you definitely want to make sure that you have lots of cups and a lot of material because each time you're going to throw this guy away, or you're going to spend efforts to pull the epoxy out, and you may have remnants, and you don't want that going back into your epoxy. So I try to use a new cup each time.
Show them how simple it is to read.
Okay, so when I first got this, I was overwhelmed. Here, let's go in the booth here so we can have some light. So if it's a 1-to-1 ratio, I've got the whole ratio here. So if I pour my 1 to 3, all I have to do is come to 3 again. For 2-to-1, same principle, just a different column. Maybe you use an epoxy that's a 4-to-1 or a 4-to-2. I think that's still 2-to-1. But if you do a 2-to-1, it's real simple. You just go to the volume that you want, and then you follow that number to the next column. If this is complicated and you don't work that way, that's okay, because they're old school and they also have ounces and milliliters and random numbers on this side. So you've got options as far as how you want to pour this. So let's go ahead and use our Part A and Part B, the resin and the hardener, and let's mix up a small amount for this inclusion. I keep calling it an inclusion. That's actually just it's just a void. An inclusion usually means where bark or another part of the tree is like grown into that tree. Usually you can tell because there's like bark in the middle of your piece and it just looks weird.
Actually, we have some pecan that has that.
Perfect. If we get a chance, we're going to show you the difference between the inclusion and the void.
Thomas says, your method of using tape works fine.
Thanks, Tom. I appreciate you backing me.
It really does work.
Yeah, it works great. It's simple. And if you're running your own business, whether it's out of a garage or if it's out of a full shop, it all comes down to materials. And we try to minimize everything for our clients. We don't want to use things frivolously, so we try to, I don't know, caveman it, if you will. We try to do things as simple as possible. KISS. So we keep it simple. And then on top of it, we like to make sure that our material cost isn't just absolutely exorbitant. So we're going to look at this mix.
How much are you going to mix for that void?
I'm going to show you this 1-to-1 ratio, and I'm only going to go to 2.
Okay.
Now, as far as what that is on this side, I'm probably only going to end up with about 6 ounces. Pretty straightforward.
And it'll probably be more than enough.
Yeah, most likely it'll be more than enough. There's ways to calculate this, guys. If you do epoxy enough, you look at it and you go, okay, I know what I need.
You can eyeball that epoxy.
For sure. And realistically, we have so many pieces that are ready to go. We can pour a little bit extra on there. Try not to waste the stuff. Like I said, it's very expensive. I shouldn't say very expensive. That's not fair. But it's more expensive than a typical finish is. So the first thing I'm going to do...
This is the what? Part A?
This is East Coast resin. This is their just their epoxy resin. Part A is usually what it's called. Part A and Part B. So I'm going to pour this, just like if I were in science class. I want to make sure that I'm matching this line. You want to make sure that your ratios are very, very close.
It doesn't take much to set the chemistry off and get a bad pour.
Yeah, so if I didn't pour enough hardener, what you're going to find is that you end up with kind of a tacky finish. Actually, I'm going to stop. We're going all the way to 2.
And too much hardener will start smoking on you and harden way too fast.
So my goal with this, just like if I were looking at a vial or a beaker or anything else, there's a little rim here, and I want to make sure that I match to the 2. Now I'm going to add Part B.
The hardener.
This is an epoxy hardener, okay? Now, depending on the brand that you use, depends on how long you need to stir for. This is very, 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 very important. The reason why is because some take a long time for stirring and mixing, while others don't take very long at all. So when you're doing flood coats and you have an excess in volume, you're going to find that you want to look for something that you can stir and it mixes quickly. Versus East Coast resins, inside of their instructions, it actually says that you should mix it from 5 to 7 minutes. So we're going to start this mixing process. It starts crystal clear. You start mixing, and you can already see it's like an opaque. I am not going to put you guys here for 6-7 minutes while I mix this. So I'm going to send Joel around the shop. You guys can look at some of our projects.
I'll show them the bar conclusion.
Yeah, show the bar conclusion. If you guys have questions, please go ahead and send them. We love to answer stuff and help the community out. That's the biggest reason for doing these. To be honest, we're super passionate about what we do. I can't explain it. You guys are most likely woodworkers, do-it-yourselves, so you understand what we're talking about. We love being able to take in trees that we've salvaged throughout our area and our state and then give them a new purpose and a new life. So we're very privileged to be a part of a woodworking community that is so supportive and wants to help everybody learn and grow. And we just want to give back. So that's what we're doing here with this epoxy tutorial. Epoxy's super simple. We want to take away all the scariness behind it so everybody can hop out there and utilize it. You can find this at Woodcraft. You can find it at Lowe's, Amazon. It's real easy. So I'm going to send Joel out. He's going to show you the difference between the bar conclusion and the voids, and then show you around to some of our other pieces, like one of our black walnut that we're using water locks on. That's one of our other fantastic finishes. So
Okay. Bubba has a question.
hit me with it.
How do you add color, say red?
That's convenient. I actually
We have red right here.
okay, so there's different ways to do this. I'm just gonna set these up here so I can continue to continue to stir. Oh, here's a good one. So everyone wants to add pigments or colors or whatever it happens to be. So there's really a couple different options with this. In some cases, you can add like a rare earth powder or this glow-in-the-dark powder or a turquoise or even glitter.
We had a lot of questions about turquoise.
Yeah, turquoise is huge.
You just buy it online
Yeah, you can get crushed turquoise online.
or pigment powder.
Yeah, you can get pigment powders online. This is System 3. This is actually a liquid. It's very inexpensive. I don't have a price on this one. I want to say they were like $12, maybe $8.99. So this is just a liquid. This is essentially part A. So it's an epoxy resin with dye added to it. It mixes incredibly well into epoxy. The color is going to come out as true as you see it here. There are epoxies that you can actually utilize that allow you to make your own colors.
Yeah, our partner at Lizard Blanks, he makes some crazy looking colors.
Yeah, there's a lot of powders that you can use. So say you're working on a project like the one we have here. If we wanted to match the color of the wood, we could get those powders, go through and find something that matches regularly. I was always taught by my mentor, if you can't make it look natural, accentuate it. So if you have lines that you can't get rid of, make them obvious, include them into the detail of it.
To simplify, Bubba, your question, you would add the color with your part A before your hardener.
So absolutely, when you add the color, you want to compensate with a lack of pouring part A. The reason behind that is because you're adding part A, it just happens to have dye in it. So don't add to, in these cups, don't add to like 2 and then add your dye. You want to leave a little space, add your dye, and then you want to add your hardener so you can make sure that your ratios are proper.
So Tyler Runt asked, he said, I've heard people say resin, or they say epoxy, or epoxy resin. Is it all the same? Resin is a type of polymer, and then your epoxy is the type of resin. Like there's phenolic resin, there's epoxy resin, there's several different types of resin. So to answer your question, epoxy resin is a very certain type of resin. You can get resin from tree sap. It's basically just a liquid that hardens.
Now we're getting crazy.
I know.
Now we're getting into some
break
science,
it down,
right?
break down the chemistry.
Yeah. So I'm going to send Joel off. He's going to look at some of these inclusions and voids and then show you some of the other pieces. When you come back, we're going to go ahead and fill that void, and then we're going to wrap that up and do a flood coat. It's going to be amazing. Thanks for being with us.
All right, guys. We had a question about inclusions, and I just want to show this piece because it has all kinds of, these are what we mean by inclusions. All these, we call them sculpting, but it's basically where the bug gets in the wood and carves out different paths. And the question was, should I fill the inclusions first before I do a flood coat? And the answer is absolutely. Because if you don't, you're going to get all kinds of air bubbles and problems, and you're probably going to end up stripping it and starting over. This wood is just so beautiful. It's spalted hackberry, I believe. Is that true?
Yeah, that is spalted hackberry.
Nice little crotch figuring there. And we mentioned the pecan having bark inclusion, and this is such a perfect example of that. This is where the tree grows inside itself, and you can see there's actual bark inside of it. And we're just gonna fill that in with clear epoxy, and you're gonna be able to see that. I think it's just the coolest thing ever, a tree growing inside itself. You can actually see, this is bark here too, coming in. Here is a sofa table that we finished with water locks. So kind of to answer your question, Tyler, this is another type of resin. This is a tung oil phenolic resin by Waterlocks. And it's another style of finish that is a protective coating against water. And actually, Waterlocks is very good for extreme temperatures. Applying it and being able to set your piece out in weather. Thomas says, try this sometime. In fiberglass work, we used a metal sheet instead of tape. Wax the metal so epoxy won't bond to metal. Brace the metal plate when you turn it over to prevent the sheet from falling. Bubba wants to know, where do you buy Systems 3?
Man, that's a really good question. If you want to pay extra for it, you can go to your local Woodcraft. If you are an Amazon Prime member, I'm not affiliated with them, but if I have it, you can get epoxy through them in 2 days. And if you want the best deal, search out System 3 on their website. Their prices are a little bit lower direct from the dealer. And they have everything you need, as well as dyes.
Marshall Reese says, so good.
So good.
I agree. So this is one half of the table, the con table. And then we have another sofa table. This is got 3 coats of Waterlocks on it. So we're going to knock off, you can kind of see the grains raised a little on this. So we'll hit that with a little sand or steel wool. And we'll put another coat of that Waterlocks on there. Let you see this. And all these voids have been filled with, let me focus here. Black epoxy. All right, I think Justin's ready to pour, so let's go learn something. Terry wants to know, do you have any jobs?
Do I have any jobs?
I don't know. I don't know if he means, are we hiring?
Clarify that question. So we have 2 pieces here. We have this one that we taped up for you guys. You were able to see it. And then we also have this giant void. It looks like maybe some damage as well as some bugs got in here. So we're going to preserve that today. We've built this dam out of tape. Pretty simple. Again, we're not trying to get crazy on anybody. We've mixed our epoxy, and we just want to pour a little bit.
He said, yes, hiring. And Jason says, how do we get a t-shirt?
How do we get a t-shirt? Have you guys seen the back of the t-shirts?
Show them the back. Here, I'll
All right.
get the back. Get the back. I love the smell of sawdust in the morning. We sure do.
It's our fave.
With our mask on, of course.
Just connect with us at info@knockonwoodcustom.com, and we can provide that to you guys.
You can also message us on Facebook too, if that's easier.
So we've added a small layer in here. It's probably less than a 1/4 inch. I'll let it all flatten out and we'll come back to it. So we'll come over to this guy because we have extra. And if possible, you want to start, especially because this wood's probably less stable, I want to go ahead and pour epoxy on the edges so that starts to soak that in. That's just my method. I'm sure other people get crazy with it. But this way, when we go back and we do our next layer, we won't have anything getting, it won't seep through or get any crazy like that.
Do you want to tell everybody that just tuned in what we're doing and what we're going to do in a little bit?
Yeah, we're giving back to the woodworking community and to the people that are do-it-yourselfers. We're looking at epoxy as a finish. Specifically, our company works with live edge hardwood. So we work with slabs, we work with the natural edge and counters, or even dimensional lumber that's made from locally sourced hardwood lumber. So we've added epoxy into this area. And again, it's not very thick. We don't want it to get super hot. We don't want it to get crazy. But since I have extra, I'm going to go through in these other areas.
It's really this simple, too.
Yeah, we're
You
not doing
just,
anything crazy.
Like patching holes.
Basically, yeah. We're just patching holes. And again, the reason why we told you guys earlier, you want to make sure you tape everything, is because these little areas may lead to the bottom side of your wood. So you may put epoxy in, and then all of a sudden, it's gone because it's on your floor. You don't want that.
And we've learned that.
Absolutely, we've definitely learned that.
Mike said he's had tape leak in the past, and he recommends a flat board. Mike, we've used around 4 different types of tapes. We've used fiberglass. We've even tried Gorilla tape, duct tape. This Scotch clear tape is just the best stuff.
Yes, sometimes it's just the tape you use. This tape hasn't failed us.
We've also learned that doing a prep on your board, you can see that these boards we've flattened. Make sure that you're not taping rough cut because it doesn't stick as well. And we've learned that the hard way too.
My epoxy's starting to warm up. So this is another reason we don't do large volumes all at once. Because by the time I've taken my time to do this careful pouring and drizzling it into these holes, now I'm getting into my epoxy being too warm. And the moment it starts to cure and it gets too warm, you're going to be in trouble. You don't want that. You're going to want your epoxy to be put down as quickly as possible.
Terry asks, he missed the first part, what type of resin are we using?
Oh, okay, guys. This is East Coast resin. We also use System 3, both of which are really nice. I like System 3 more, personally. I'm going to pour a little extra in here because I've got it.
And just to let you guys know that are just hopping on here, right now we're demonstrating how to fill your voids as far as taping the backs, proper pouring amounts. And then here in a little bit, we're going to show you how to do a mirror coat or a flood coat, which is your top coat, your nice pretty coat.
All right. I don't feel comfortable pouring anymore because once we start getting too thick with our epoxy, we're going to get into heating issues, and when the epoxy cures, it'll break open. Although that might be okay if you're just doing the first few layers and you're going to fill it in again anyways, but we try to make this as smooth as possible, especially since it's clear, because you may see that fissure as you add more layers of epoxy going on.
I'm going to show them underneath and show them how well the tape is holding up.
Oh, for sure. I don't know if you have lighting down there.
So you can see no dips. We're flat. It's holding it. I don't see any drips, which is always a good sign. Back to Justin.
Okay, so this is heavily debated, I guess, if you want to. It's all about the equipment you prefer. If you guys want to get one of those little torches, and that's great for you, and you buy the propane, it's good, but we've found that with some epoxies, it's really easy to scorch them. You don't want to do that because it will forever impact your epoxy. So we went and bought this, the Wagner.
The Wagner.
The Wagner. It's a variable heat gun.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got 2 speeds, and what we want to do is pop these bubbles.
Caress your epoxy with
Yeah.
the air.
You don't need to come through here and hold it down. That's not what we're looking for. You may need to move on, let it cool.
Heat rises, hot air rises, so you're really just bringing the air to the top, which the epoxy does naturally, but you're getting the majority of the air out now, so that way when it hardens, you're going to have a nice, solid clear. Bob Taylor, SB Design, amazing work, guys. Sharing knowledge in the woodworking community is always helpful. Thank you.
Man,
That's what we're about.
that's what we're trying to do. I found, I'll tell you guys a little quick personal story. My mentor was huge into woodwork, and he developed brain cancer. This guy was a heavy contributor, and he helped me. He helped me find a passion that most people don't chase anymore. You don't see a lot of guys doing woodwork because it's not something getting passed down to generation and generation. It's not until we're old and, you know, we've hit 65 and we retire from our business or wherever we worked and we realize that we have a passion for something. So in this generation, we're seeing a lot of evolution and changes, and we're chasing it. This is something we love dearly, and we want to encourage others to find things like this. It may not be woodworking. You know, you may like something else, and maybe you like to crochet. I don't know. But if I can help and put a tutorial out and make this easier for somebody, they don't have to spend a year and a half making the same mistakes we did with epoxy, we're going to do it. So I'm glad that you guys hopefully are able to pull some extras out of this, and you're able to implement it in your lives.
Bob wants to know, does the first pour have to harden before you put another coat on?
Yes.
Absolutely.
The reason why is you're going to have 2 separate chemical processes going on. Most epoxy, especially with system 3, you can get different levels of hardeners. So it may be fast, which is like 30-minute. Now keep in mind your mixing times in that. So you got to make sure you have the right one to work, etc. You can get a medium or even a slow, which takes a long time to cure up. So definitely make sure that that goes through its heating processes and cools down, so that way you don't have to have any issues going forward.
Yeah, I would additionally add, if you are going to do epoxy, be ready. And when you start mixing, make sure that you're ready to pour and your tools are ready to go, because you're working against the clock as soon as that hardener hits the resin. Nicholas says, your channel's so cool. Jason says, keep up the great work. And Alejandro says, what kind of resin are you using?
All right, we touched on this earlier. This is from East Coast Resin. It's a 1-to-1 ratio mix. It's pretty inexpensive, but it has different qualities than System 3. System 3 is, in my opinion, a much more rigid resin. So when you pour it and you're looking for scratch resistance, maybe this is a bar top, right? And you really know that it's going to take some damage over time. I love System 3 for that.
We're going to show you that in a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So for East Coast resin, I like it even more, though, because it's safer. With it being more of a hobby epoxy or an art epoxy, it's a 1-to-1 ratio. And from my research, the fumes are safer because we're going through a chemical reaction. So we are breathing in some of this. Just so you guys know, we prefer to wear a mask when we're doing big volumes, just because I like my lungs. I'm a healthy guy, and I don't like breathing in this nasty stuff. So the 1-to-1 ratio from East Coast resins is supposed to be a little safer in smaller enclosed areas, but always try to make sure you have good ventilation. We have fresh air coming into this, so look for that when you guys are making your choice on what product you like.
Russell says, what is the max thickness you can pour at once? We touched on this earlier. It depends on your epoxy brand, and you really want to do your initial very first void fill like we're doing right now. You want to keep it around a 1/16 to an 1/8. I would say a quarter is probably pushing it. The thicker you go, the more chance you have to create cracks or fissures from the heat of your epoxy hardening. Jeremy asks, how does it compare to West Systems? I don't know if have you?
West Systems is a little bit different. I haven't personally used it. I've seen it. One of the things I love the most about it is each time you pump the can, it gives you a specific volume, so you don't have to use the measuring cups as much. But I hear, as far as a resin, it's a stellar product. I personally, from not having personal experience, I would say from what I've read and what I've seen, it probably rates pretty close to System 3. So by all means, go out there and try it. I think that you'll have good success with it. I've seen a lot of people, like the Wood Whisperer has used it. I'm pretty sure Matt Cremona has used it. So people above me, they've endorsed it and utilized it. So definitely give it a try.
Do you know of any epoxies to use for wooden cups?
So now you're talking about food grade. I don't know that epoxy would be your best choice on that.
You can buy food grade epoxy, but the two brands that we've told you guys about, they are not food safe.
Yeah.
As far as like eating off of or putting your mouth onto. Waterlocks. You can tell them a little about.
All right.
Waterlocks.
I'll plug Waterlocks for a second. Waterlocks is a resin tung oil, and it's mixed with mineral spirits. And basically, what happens is you can utilize it like a paint-on, so you're not having to worry about runs, etc., like you would with epoxy. The good news is that after 28 days of off-gassing, it's food safe, and it's actually been cleared by the FDA, I believe, for use in that. So whether you're using it on cutting boards or butcher blocks, to my knowledge, it's safe. Always do your research. We're just putting out the information that we know of offhand. Now, you can also use, I'm going to get crazy with you on some knowledge, there's a beetle, it's the shellac beetle, and it produces, through its own physical processes, it produces shellac. And then they cut it with denatured alcohol, and you get like a de-waxed shellac. That's actually the same product that's sprayed onto your fruits. So like every time you eat an apple, there's wax on it. It helps it preserve it. That's something that our country allows, so that's how we import things. That actually is probably your best grade. It's the most natural. I would personally say that it's one of the better natural finishes that you can utilize. Again, I'm not big on making cups, and I'm not big on drinking or eating directly from things that we create. I prefer my plates to be ceramic. So whatever you guys choose, we can research it. And we can talk to some of our turners, or if some of our turners are listening right now, please chime in on how you like to finish stuff.
I'm going to show them just how quickly these bubbles start disappearing. You can see less and less. Malcolm is asking about streaking colors in epoxy, and we've never really messed with streaking. We've watched a few YouTube videos.
Yeah.
That are awesome. They do some crazy coloring and.
Yeah, I don't know what product is used for that. I saw this lady doing a canvas art with epoxy.
Art epoxy. I
want to say it was similar to the 1-to-1 ratio mix that we used with East Coast resins, and that epoxy
It's a little bit different in nature. So for that, I would research it. They use certain types of pigments, and they're able to mix it. And then when they pour it out, it gets crazy and goes everywhere. And they have different swooshing, and the coloration is really neat. So we're gonna prep.
Yeah, I got someone wanting to see the label of what we just poured. So before we go, this is East Coast Resin A, East Coast Resin B. It's a 1-to-1. And that is what we use to do our general fills. We do prefer Systems 3, but we're actually low on the on that, so this is our backup, and we got plenty of that. This is what we're about to do, our mirror coat or flood coat. Systems 3 mirror coat.
So I wanted to address something. We had a question that was, how do you calculate that? Like, I don't even know how to understand the math behind this. It took us a little while, and we had to play with it and see what ratios were right. First off, we read the instructions. I know, it's weird, but we broke out the little paper that came with it and really understood the product we were working with. And then we did hands-on experiments. So this is System 3, and it's their Mirror Coat line. We're going to utilize that today on our black walnut. And first I'm going to show you guys how to measure board foot.
All right. Ryan says he's done this before to a sign he made on his YouTube channel, and once cured, it makes a sign or wooden project pop.
Who is that, Ryan?
Ryan Finters.
Ryan Finters, do me a favor. In our comments, tag that video, because we want to share that. If that's something that you've already done, that might be valid for somebody else, and I'd love for them to see it, because we want to empty our cup of knowledge, and hopefully everybody that's watching is in the same boat that we are. We just want to empty it, give you guys everything we can. That way you guys can make leaps and bounds and produce amazing, beautiful pieces. So we're looking at this project.
What do you got?
This is right at 8 feet. It's actually 93 inches, so it's a couple off. And then we're right at 19 inches. The first thing I realized when we were pouring epoxy is don't go light. You don't have time to go back and mix another batch typically, because that curing process, the question we just had, can you do one and then pour over the other one? Even 30-minute gaps can cause problems.
Flood coat, I mean, it is what it is in the name. You're flooding your piece.
You want to make sure
it to run over the edges.
It's going to get messy.
Yeah.
So if you care about your floor,
which we don't.
By the way, this comes up with a scraper, so
yeah, it easily comes up.
It pops right up. There's no like long-lasting issues. So if your wife's yelling at you because you made like epoxy mountains in the garage, sorry, hon. It does come up, and then you can just fix the floor later. So we're looking at our calculations for board footage. Actually, technically, this is square foot. I apologize. Board foot would include the thickness of the piece, and that's not what we're doing. We just want to look at surface area. So a board foot is 12 inches by 12 inches. And we need, with System 3, you want 4 ounces per square foot.
For your seal coat.
No, for your flood coat.
Flood coat.
Seal coat.
Yeah, sorry.
They say a half ounce, but we always do an ounce. A half ounce is good too. I just find that I always run light because we deal with live edge wood, so it's really hard to calculate something. You're like, oh, that goes in a little, so we should subtract a foot, or it gets a little crazy. So we're going to say this is closer to 24 inches because we want to include the edges. We always want to make sure that, so we don't want to get light in our pour. So we're going to say 24 inches by 8 feet. So that's 8 and 8. It gives us 16. 16 times 4 is like, what is that, 20 and 4?
400 and
That's a lot of numbers,
something.
right? If you have problems with math like I do, there's calculators and there's apps, and you can get on there and you can calculate all this. So we're going to use the 16, okay? And then we're going to do 4 ounces. 16, 16 is 32, 32 times 2 is 64. Not good at math. It's really hard to do woodwork. I'm horrible at math. I'm sorry. I didn't know I was going to quiz
8
myself
times
today.
24.
Yes, now we're being horrible. So I'm going to go get an extra cup.
8 times 2 is, yeah, you did it. Okay.
You're killing me, Small.
Sorry.
So I'm going to get an extra cup, and we're going to mix up batches for this so we can go ahead and flood it for you guys.
Mushtak asked, can you do it one time in grams? Convert your ounces to grams.
Oh, man.
I would say figure it out in ounces and use Google.
I didn't even know grams and ounces went together, but I guess it's fluid. Being here in one of the only countries that uses the system we do, I don't know conversions. I think in 7th grade for like a week, we tried to go to metric.
All right, Justin's going to grab the cups. I'm going to show you guys what we're using again. Systems 3 mirror coat. And we're going to go over this, but it's self-leveling. We had a question about your boards being flat when you're pouring and stuff. And the answer is, yeah, you need it to be flat. But the epoxy actually does all the hard work for you once you've spread it out evenly. It'll adhere to itself and self-level. Here's the brand we used earlier. One more time for the peeps. All right.
We're probably actually going to do more like 30 and 30 just to keep it simple so we don't have an extra cup for no reason. We're back with our System 3. This is going to be a 2-to-1 ratio mix. I should have enough here to make this happen. So I'm going to divide my 30 by 3 parts because I have a 2-part and a 1-part. So to do that, I have 30 ounces. I'll have 10, 10, and 10. So that means each cup, 2 parts. I'm going to have 20 ounces. And then I'll do 10 ounces of my part B.
Malcolm said, this is good and so interesting. I'm just about to get into this. So a big thank you from the UK.
Who is that, Malcolm?
Malcolm Alexander.
Malcolm, we appreciate you. We're trying to help everybody. And epoxy seems to be one of those scary things. And we're glad that it helped.
We've got people doing the conversions for us.
Thank you. We appreciate it. I'm going to run out of this mirror coat, which is okay. I'm going to almost make it. So I went to 20 on one of these, and then I went to 14 on another. Try not to run out of materials. I would use our other one. We have the East Coast resins, but I don't like it as a mirror coat. It stays softer longer. Maybe it's just me. It's a personal thing. I just prefer that strong coat. Plus, this mixes within 60 seconds to 2 minutes versus East Coast resin. I have to stir that for 6-7 minutes, and it's not fun. It's not fun at all. So I'm going to add my part B. I also don't enjoy going all the way to the top of the cup because I do have to mix this. I'm going to go get us some stir sticks. We're going to mix this up.
Brett, you asked, I found it separates from the edges after it flows over. Have you had this issue? Not entirely, no. We did try taping the bottom to prevent drip bumps. And when we try to remove that, it left a very sharp edge. It was kind of a pain to get rid of. But we've never had separation on the edges. Have you experienced? I don't think we've experienced
Separations.
that. Like he's asking, like when he pours it on the edge, it's coming off, separating.
I would go ahead.
Are you leaving your bark on?
Ooh, some good questions here. So if you're having separation, like it's peeling back, you might want to look at two things. Did I seal the bottom? That's a big one, because a lot of times I see that people don't seal the bottom. And what happens is you have moisture content issues, and then you have flexing that happens over the seasons, because that wood's still taking in moisture from the air. So here where we're located, you get 13%, and it'll range back and forth. Well, that messes with your furniture piece. So first thing, make sure you always seal the bottom. Not saying that you're not. But past that, you might want to see if your wood project was dried completely. A lot of times where we're located, you get these guys that cut down trees and they sell wet lumber. Not good. If you're trying to finish wet lumber, it's going to come back and get you. It's going to cause problems, just like what you're talking about. That separation may be from shrinkage. Additionally, you may look at pouring more coats. So maybe you just did a light coat and you don't have enough on that piece.
Yeah, I guess the corner, when your epoxy flows off that corner, the very top of your corner is going to be where the least amount of epoxy sets up. So maybe you're just not using enough. That could be something as well. Alejandro asked, what do you use to clean the measure recipients? I think he means the cups, and these are disposal. We buy about 100 at a time.
You can buy these in hundreds.
They're actually way cheap.
Yeah, don't go to Lowe's and buy cups.
Again, autobodynow.com. I think how much was 100? Like around 50 or something like that?
I don't want to guess.
Yeah.
I don't want to tell you that they're...
If you guys are going to pour epoxy, it's super cost efficient to just buy a bunch of these cups. Someone wants to see our shop?
Take them on tour. I'm mixing this up. So
yeah, I'll show them. So this, we have some spalted hackberry. This is a mixture of Osage orange, pecan. There's walnut on the bottom. This is 3-inch walnut, 2.5-inch walnut. All these sacks are walnut.
Love walnut.
Malcolm asked, are gloves necessary, Justin?
This is a chemical. Malcolm, I'm not wearing gloves, and I'm so okay. When
Yes.
you guys are done with the shop tour, come back to me, and I'm going to tell you a horror story.
Okay. We will definitely come back. We are eager to hear your horror story. Because it didn't happen to us, right?
Yeah.
This is all walnut. We love walnut. And here's some of our small pieces. Our one, like we got one slab left of something. All kinds of species. This is our planer table. We use a router to plane our big boards. I'll show you the bit. We actually have experimented with several bits, but this one is so good. So good. These are some wood that's acclimating for some projects. We've got the weight off of them right now because we're actually working on them. This is spalted maple. It's roughly 10 foot long, 4 foot wide, 3 inches thick. That's going to be some awesome conference tables. Messy workbench, because you can't be working unless your stuff's messy. This is some mirrors that we do. Part of the pecan table. Lunch spot. Here's the water locks that we use. And just little work areas, our tools, heater, miter saw, table saw.
Can I bring you back?
Coming back. I think you had a story for us.
Dead, and I also want to show you something.
Jeremy, we source our wood. We repurpose fallen trees or trees that we use a partner, Tree Service, Dilly's Tree Service. They're super great people.
Amazing company.
Amazing. They love the idea and have a passion for giving dead trees or unwanted trees new life. And we work with them. I'm going to give them a little peek.
Yeah, go for it. I'll be ready for a second.
So that's all donated wood. But we source our wood locally. We totally believe in just using what's around us. Talon, we are filling voids. So we just did this earlier. So be sure to go back and see how we did all that. And right now we are doing a top coat, flood coat, mirror coat. They're all called those things, but basically it's your final epoxy coat. Patrick, we are using Systems 3 mirror coat for our top coat of epoxy. It's a bar top epoxy, self-leveling. You pour it, and I believe Justin had something.
I do. So
You
both
wanna
of our
show the-
both of our epoxies now are clear and they're ready to go. So we're gonna pop in here real quick. I wanted to tell you a story, and this is about safety. I just want to take like 4 seconds, and I'm not wearing glasses right now. I don't know why, but it's a horrible decision. I was mixing epoxy, and I mean, you whip it, right? So you're stirring it, you're doing your thing. The problem is sometimes little drops like to shoot upward. And I'm the guy that's like looking down and into the cup to make sure I'm getting the right signals and I know that it's mixing properly. Well, I had some shoot up and land in my eye. I don't know if you know what epoxy does, but it hardens, and that scared me. Luckily, my wife's a nurse. She's an amazing woman. She only laughed at me for probably like 6 minutes. But I went straight to the eye wash station and freaked out for like half an hour waiting on my eyeball to have mirror coat. I think it would look cool, maybe, I don't know, with some dye. But we're going to get into pouring this. Our project is level. That's huge. If it's tilted for any reason, you're actually going to find that your self-leveling mirror coat is going to do the same thing.
Yeah, it's going to follow the angle at which your board is. So if you're flat, it's going to be flat.
Additionally, I know you can't really tell, but I'm lifted away from this. So if epoxy drips on it, no big deal. I want to make sure that that stick is further back, so if I do have drips, it doesn't connect with it.
This is so you don't bond your sawhorse to your project.
Yeah, you don't want to do that. So when I pour, just like I'm doing a glue up, I like to go in like an S pattern and keep most of my product in the center. And I'll show you why here in a minute. When I get to a point, I take this cup, I flip it over.
Cup down.
So you don't want to scrape out from the sides. If you scrape out from the sides, there's a potential that you're going to pull unmixed part A and part B of the epoxy solution. Not a big deal, but it's definitely something that you want to make sure that you're not putting in your project. Because if you do that, you'll end up with like a tacky spot or a problem area.
Susan asked, or actually stated, she's used a bar top resin before and found it retains semi-soft. If a heavy object is left in a place, it leaves an impression. It will come back up after the object is moved. Is that a problem with the mirror coat? This is something that we just got through talking about. We prefer Systems 3 for our mirror coat. We use East Coast resin for our void fill, simply for that reason, Susan. This epoxy hardens harder. And we've had, I guess, malleable epoxy, and you're right, it does leave whatever any kind of hard object you would set on it, it would leave a imprint of that, and you don't want that with your epoxy. Trial and error with brands.
Make sure your mixing ratio is also
your mixing ratio, your mixing time. There's a lot of things that go into it that we've covered earlier in the video, and we've done all the hard work for you. So if you get Systems 3 and you follow this video with your project, you should be okay.
So one of the tips and tricks that we found along the way is this notched trowel.
Regular trowel.
So yeah, it's just a masonry trowel. And we use this to apply a level coat to begin with, to coat across our project piece. I don't want anything going over the sides just yet.
He's just getting it as close to the edge as he can without running off right now. And really what he's doing is he's ensuring that everything has an equal coat in the center up to the edges before we run off and coat the sides. And this trowel really helps out a lot. Especially, you can see after Justin goes over, it levels out. And those tracks absolutely disappear.
So I poured heavier on one side. This notch trowel lets me move enough so I can get everything evenly dispersed. Okay, so now that I've pushed it all out to the sides, I can go through and start knocking this epoxy over. This is where the flood comes from. I just want to migrate it towards my edges. We were talking about waste earlier, and someone asked, how do we maintain waste so we're not just pouring everything all over the ground? And this is one of the ways that we deal with that.
Also, that ratio of ounces to surface square footage really plays out the way you want it to. You can always make more than enough, but not enough is where you're going to have a problem. Too much is okay, not enough is bad.
So on these drips, the first thing I start to do is with my gloved hand, I just come back over, make sure we're nice and even. And then I just contour it out. This reduces those weird run lines.
Nice to see the flow over the edge.
I try to minimize that, actually.
So you can see here we have
right here
dripping.
So it's flowed over the edge, and I'll take my hand and contour it to the live edge. Make sure, we talked about this earlier, on these high edges right here, this is where you're going to start to see the thin portions of your epoxy. I can definitely tell you we poured a little light for this, and that's because our material ran out. It's 100% my fault.
What temp do you keep in the workshop area for your epoxy? We keep it at about 70 degrees Fahrenheit.
70 to 75. That's what the manufacturer recommends. If you pour... Move out to the shop. What are we going to do?
We lost you guys. Sorry. All right, what were you explaining?
Someone asked about weather. Like, what's the temperature in here? And we keep it right around 70 to 75.
So the slab should have a finish or sealer before the epoxy. Sorry if this has been mentioned.
No, that's great. That's something that we talk about. We like to do an undercoat with shellac. It's like a universal sealer, in our opinion. And you can do a tung oil. You can really do anything you want. But the biggest thing is you want to make sure it's dry. You want to make sure that your project piece is dry, because you don't want the epoxy to pull up any of the coloration or whatever you're utilizing. So if, say, you stained your wood, we don't do that here, but if you stain your wood, you want to make sure that that's nice and dry before you decide to put epoxy on, because it may carry on some of that tint. You definitely don't want that. Additionally, we like to utilize seal coats. I know we've talked about this in other videos, but we want to make sure that you guys understand this is a flood coat. A seal coat is a lot thinner, and it can be squeegeed on, brushed on, whatever you prefer, and that will stop your air bubbles, etc., from coming through.
We use high-density rollers.
Yeah, if you want to take them out there real quick,
Yeah, I'll show
it's
them.
underneath.
I'll show them what we use real quick. For our seal coat, we use a ratio of 1 ounce per square foot, and we just use these high dense rollers. 10-pack latex high density foam. We just use them and toss them. Anything that you use to spread your epoxy out, put your seal coat on or anything, be prepared to dispose of it, because it's just going to harden. We don't really try to clean anything that epoxy gets on, because it's super tough to get out.
One of the big things that I'll tell you guys to look for is when you apply this, you want to make sure the epoxy touches everything. For some weird reason, it may give you like a dry spot. It may go right around it. It probably is going to be on the edge. You want to make sure that you get some epoxy on it. And it should self-level and take care of everything. So, as you can see, we have lots of bubbles. I'm going to lose this glove. Again, we're back to our Wagner. This doesn't have to be super hot.
Here, show them a bubble popping.
All right. Boom.
Boom.
That's bubble popping. That
That's
should be like a rap song or something. Or a country song.
Yeah, right.
Or an app for that bubble popping app. But the thing is, it's not the big bubbles that you have to be worried about. Make sure you have good light. And you can actually see the micro bubbles. You want all of those to go away. Because that's what gives you your nice and clear mirror coat top finish.
Here's a whole bunch to have fun with.
Oh, yeah.
Boom.
So the heat barely touches it. You don't want to sit here and hold it down. On the epoxy, you will find that there's problems with that. Real quick, I want to show you. Look at this. We did this whole area, and there's 2 little baby dry spots right here. This will, if you're a perfectionist, and you like your stuff to be perfect, that will mess with you. So make sure that you go back and you check for those.
Terry said, can a cooler temperature affect the gloss finish? Yes. Humidity can affect.
Oh, that's a big one. Humidity.
Humidity can affect. It'll leave, I guess, a milky.
Like a bunch of air bubbles, basically.
Yeah, and guess what, guys? The heat gun takes the humidity out of it. So, heat gun is super important with epoxy.
Don't. If it's in the summer and you're putting this finish on, don't sweat in your epoxy.
Oh yeah.
I know
Yeah.
it sounds silly, but it gets hot, man. You're sweating, and you're working with this heat gun, and there's hot chemical reactions. You know, don't sweat in your epoxy because it will cause lots of problems. Just that simple.
We got a tip from Alan.
Alan, tell us.
Vinegar, when the epoxy is wet, you can clean the tool with wet vinegar.
What? I did not know that, Alan.
We just learned something.
Just learned it. So Alan says use vinegar. Can it be red wine vinegar? Does it house vinegar? What are we using specifically?
Apple cider vinegar.
Apple cider. I drink it while we're. That's cool. I like that because we always end up with equipment that we can't clean.
No bubbles. Perfect mirror coat. That is what you want, guys. A lot of things affect epoxy. Temperature, humidity, mixing time.
Now,
None of that should scare you away from trying this, though. It's easier, and the more you do it, the more you're going to become better at it and efficient at it. You had something?
probably I completely forgot about it.
Sorry, dude. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're fine. I just want to share my knowledge.
Would the Harbor Freight heat gun work? I think, is this Harbor Freight heat gun? Wagner?
I think this is Lowe's.
It's cheap.
I think maybe even Amazon.
If it puts out heat and it, like a hair dryer even would work.
Yep. The biggest thing that you're looking for, guys, is this has two different heat settings. It's got a super low and then a hot, like a high. So we like to make sure that we have a variable setting because who knows, your epoxy might be weird and it scorches really simple. Art epoxies are a lot like that. Art, so like decorative epoxies, like a 1-to-1 mix, and they scorch easier. So by all means, get a variable heat gun.
2 questions.
Hit me with them.
One's easy. Which brand epoxy do we prefer?
Okay,
Systems 3
I agree.
or East Coast Resin for your voids. But we would definitely say Systems 3 all around best epoxy we've used. The next question is, do you buff or cut the finish once it's cured? Dude.
So whatever you do, don't try to offer double-sided epoxy.
Like
and-
mirror coat on both
Yeah,
sides.
don't do like mirror coat on one side, mirror coat on another. And if you do, that's a whole different video, and we'll get into it later. But you have to sand this down because you're going to have the little overrun bumps.
I can show them, actually.
Yeah.
You're going to have these on your underside. And we've tried tape. We've tried all kinds of things to prevent it. It just happens. And the best way is mirror coat your top, sand your bottom. But back to buffing or cutting, Justin.
Okay, so say I get something funky in there, right? Say maybe a fly fell in there, and it's real simple and it's an easy fix, but I gotta sand it. So you can sand it, not a problem. Make sure when you sand it, you go to a reasonable grit. I would start maybe
320, 400.
Yeah, 324. You don't want to make big issues. You don't want to use 60 or 35 or 80 or a rock.
You'll never get it out.
Yeah, it's going to be obvious. So use that high grit and work it to a level where it's flat and it's reasonable. And then we use a buffer, and it's a variable speed. Now, we do use high-end buffing compound. So as far as buffing and polishing, it's totally doable. Just know the moment you use any kind of sandpaper on epoxy, it's going to be difficult to mask it. You're going to see it probably more often than not.
And this is almost impossible to get back to.
Yeah, absolutely.
We use automotive compounds, and
3M, I think.
3M automotive buffing compounds. We got 3 stages of it, and even at the highest grade of polish, you're still only at it's not. It's shiny, but it's not. It's just not gloss.
Maybe a matte. Would be fair. Definitely
it's
not
a beautiful look. I would definitely only recommend that to more experienced epoxy users, because me and Justin have been up hours
11 p.m. trying to like buff floating live edge shelves because we were trying to do epoxy on both sides. Huge learning experience.
Let's see. You're beautiful, guys. I love your work. How long would you leave the slab to dry, or before applying the epoxy, after oiling?
I would go on the recommendation of the manufacturer of the oil that you utilize. So for us, we have a tongue oil by Waterlocks that specifically says 28 days for off gas. Cutting that short any bit might not be a good idea.
I would just research your finish.
Yeah. Now, if you want something easy, if you want something super simple that dries super quick and you're not going to be waiting a really long time, because if you guys know anything about clients in woodworking, they wanted it, in 2 weeks. So realistically, use shellac, use a de-wax shellac, and it'll be like a universal undercoat, and you can put it on. It dries in about 5 minutes. Very simple, very easy. It's a old world furniture sealer or furniture finish. It was used for like 100+ years. It's solid. It's very inexpensive. I definitely suggest it. Outside of that, we're going to give you guys a couple minutes to ask any questions you have. I'm going to make sure that I don't have any bubbles throughout this. If you guys have stayed with us the whole time, we appreciate you.
Yeah,
And
thank you, guys.
If you have future subjects and questions that you want us to do a live shot on, please send it in to us. Maybe you want a t-shirt. Feel free to message us on Facebook at Knock on Wood Custom, or you can email us at info@knockonwoodcustom.com, and we'll take care of you guys.
I just want to show you. We've done black epoxy void fills on here. On another video, you can see how we do that. But we had some questions about coloration, matching your color, and we love the black in the walnut. It just looks so natural. We absolutely love how it looks. Chris, we actually harvest our own slabs.
We do it all!
We do it all. We harvest the trees with crane truck. And then we sawmill them up, we kiln dry them, we acclimate them, we plane them, we acclimate them, and then we turn it into beautiful stuff like you're seeing right now. Awesome work, very nice. Thank you guys for all your support, for real. But just to be humble, we are just out here sharing what we learned, because we know how hard it is doing this without any information to really go off of.
I'm not sure who said it, and I'm going to use this in the same sense. I'm big on mentors, whether it's in a business or a hobby, whatever it happens to be. Man, I got where I was by standing on the shoulders of giants. The reality is I couldn't have got where I was without finding resources like you guys are watching right now, whether it's Facebook Live, whether it's YouTube, or hands-on with somebody. So search out people that are knowledgeable. They're going to save you money. They're going to save you time. And it's going to help. So anytime you can, reach out to that mentor, and maybe they can help you help other people in the future.
Do we have a YouTube channel? Yes. It's Knock on Wood Custom. We are in the process of putting more and more videos on there, and this video will probably be on there. We have a couple other live videos that'll probably be on there.
Yep.
We're starting to understand helping other people, and this is the best way we know how. And so we're trying to reach out in different social medias. So we are building a YouTube channel. We need to do more live sessions. Joe, we agree. Absolutely, we are going to do more of these. One of the best videos I've seen, totally informative, and such an easy way to understand. Thank you. Soaking my brain with your knowledge. Do you get a better finish with epoxy or lots of layers of lacquer?
This is like 100 layers of lacquer. This is pretty crazy if you think about it. This is a quick way to do massive amounts of coats.
This is like a 1/4 inch thick coat on top of your wood.
Yeah, I mean,
it's sealed for life. It'll last longer than any of us will live.
that's what we like about this. This is generational. We give these to our clients, and they're able to either leave them in their home or take them with us. It's not a pressed piece of fiberboard. It's something that they're going to be able to have for a really long time. So I guess that's one of the most satisfying things that we do. Not only do we give purpose to something that could have easily been firewood, but we're able to give it a new home.
Neighbors. Noisy neighbors.
I'm not going to yell over that. I'm not gonna yell over that.
Eric, yes, we are live, if you can't tell.
We'll just cut that out, right?
Yeah.
No,
you can cut that out. Edit. Let's get visual stimulation. This is basically done, guys. Now we just wait for it to cure. Justin's just maintaining it. We recommend babysitting your epoxy for at least 30 minutes to an hour after you've poured it. Justin, real quick, our battery's getting low.
Sorry, guys.
Someone wants to know, how did Knock on Wood get its start?
Man, I'm a veteran, and I could not handle working for people. That's really all it was. And I met a gentleman that had a passion for milling live edge lumber. He did it at his house, and he just kind of brought me in. He saw that I loved it, and I was just so burning hot, passionate about being a part of this. And it allowed me to work by myself or in small teams, which is something that I really prefer. And it allows us to do something unique. So I was under his wing for a while. He developed brain cancer, and unfortunately, as my mentor,
they say they can hear you.
Okay, good. I'm really sorry. But as my mentor, he wasn't able to really serve in a capacity to provide me information anymore. So I had to shift over and find education elsewhere. As far as my starting, it was about as humble as it gets, man. We worked in our garage, in my house, in my backyard, and we've moved from shop to a bigger shop with more equipment. If you are starting your own business, find neighbors that are less noisy. That's where I would start.
Be consistent and never be afraid to keep pushing forward.
Yeah, man. Just know that it's all about baby steps. We're writing a book right now, and it's called Baby Steps, and it's just that. It's just the point of taking that step of what's tomorrow. You know, yeah, you have a goal, and you're looking for how can I be somewhere in a year, or how can I be somewhere in 2 years, and that's great. But realistically, you've got to hustle and grind every 24-hour period. So find something that you're passionate about, that you love greatly, and then just keep doing it, man. Keep hustling for as long as you can, and find other people that are passionate about it. I stumbled into my partner, Joel.
What up?
I know, right? He's probably one
the
of the
cameraman.
the best bearded cohort I can find, and he was just super passionate about it. So we all got crazy. I can't speak enough about Knock on Wood Custom.
It touches our heart.
Yeah, it really does. It's very big to us, and it's something that we're growing every day. We like that we're able to repurpose wood that was going to be trashed. We love that we're in control of the whole process. So we have a tree that has a story, and then we mill it, then we dry it, and then we craft it into something, and we can actually deliver it and install it and see its final home, if you will.
Guys, this has a story. We rescued this tree from Oklahoma City, and it was going to be thrown away. And now look at it. And that's what we like to do. Every piece of wood that we have, we never cut down. We just rescue it. How long should you dry? That, my friend, is a great question. And
There's a lot of things that go into drying things. The thickness of your wood, the type of wood, if it's a hardwood, softwood. But you're looking at about 3 months per inch if you air dry. We kiln dry our wood. It takes about 30 days for a 2 to 3 inch board of walnut. So if you can get a hold of someone that kiln dries for you,
Do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't just air dry. Air drying's great, but your internal moisture content will never be where you need it to be, unless it's like really thin.
Yeah.
And that you can't make a good tabletop or a countertop out of that after you shape it. Your internal moisture content should be roughly 6 to 8%, and usually you can only drop it to about 13% if you're in an area like we are. Maybe if you're in like Arizona where it's like 120 at midnight, yeah, you can probably find a good way to air dry that. But for the most part, just look for someone that can kiln it. Brian, that's a good question. How much would a client normally pay for this piece?
Man, that's something that we don't usually like to share.
I will share.
But
I will
it's
help.
not like the price. It's just that it's what is your time worth.
Yeah.
Because the material is researchable as far as cost.
Yeah.
So it's what is your time worth, and what is your customer willing to pay, and what quality of craft do you think that you're at? And that's where I was.
So we're very transparent anytime that we bill something, back down to the hours. And when we bill it at a certain price, that's what you pay no matter what, even if we had to learn, an extra 40 hours worth of material to get where we needed to be. So when you bid a project, look at your materials. Pretty simple, right? Make sure that you put in a margin. We're big on margins, not because we want to charge extra, but because it always takes a lot more than you might think, especially if you have to maybe flood coat something 4 or 5 times. That can become an expenditure that cuts into your price.
Learning is expensive.
Yeah, learning's expensive. So find a mentor. But realistically, we do that plus your hourly rate. Now, our hourly rates changed from the time that we started all the way to now. And if you have 2 people, those are all things that you want to include into it. Live edge wood, we're big on making sure that our client loves the piece that they select. We don't just select a piece for them and then, hey, go on about your business. No, they come and find the log or the slab rather that fits for them. And to be honest, it makes a big difference.
We're gonna have to plug this in.
Yeah, here
so we can follow up with you guys.
Okay, we're gonna answer a few more questions, but we're gonna plug our phone in. So, Malcolm Alexander, he asked, how long will that plank take to dry now? That's a pretty straightforward question. Realistically, that plank will cure over the next 24 hours. So that epoxy will be hard. Sometimes
Man, honestly, my rule of thumb is 24 hours. It may say 4 hours. That's great, but I
In ideal conditions.
yeah, in ideal conditions, you want to go 24 hours.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Won't the wood acclimate back to its surrounding humidity regardless of how dry you get the wood with a kiln? Yes, but that's what you want. You want to work it in the environment that it's going to be in.
Okay, so I'm going to answer this in a scientific manner. You want it to drop to 6 to 8% internal moisture content. The reason behind that is it's dry. Yes, when you bring it back in your shop, you may come up to 13% moisture content. But usually that's not the core. That's going to be on the outside where it does suck that in. And what you'll want to do is bring it inside, let it acclimate. Usually we allow for 2 to 3 weeks for acclimation purposes. The big thing is you want to mill or sand or flatten your board to about 1/4 inch of the thickness that it will ultimately be. And you want to let it acclimate from there because you still may get some movement. Once it's acclimated, you can finish working it. And then you'll have a stabilized product that doesn't twist. That's usually what happens is it's going to twist on you. And
bow, cup, twist.
All of it.
It's going to move.
It's going to move. So make sure that you have some flex in that. It's all about acclimation. If you try to,
Oh man,
I love this. So if you try to kiln it, flatten it, and work it, you're going to find problems with that. It's going to want to try to acclimate and twist on you, and then you'll have a twisted project. So, Will Horseman, I'm not sure how to read into that.
Yeah. Tops as in like our tabletops. I don't think they're removable.
And my shirt is important to me.
Yeah, my shirt. It's cold here.
Okay, so let's see, Derek, are you guys in Claremore? You can see that on our Facebook. We're in Oklahoma. We're not trying to keep it a secret, but we are available local. If you guys want to come by and see us, we're open to the public. You guys can stop out and hang out.
Learn something.
Is the epoxy okay for on the floors to walk on? I've ruined more pairs of shoes. Yeah, my wife's pretty angry at me frequently because it gets on my clothes, it gets on my shoes, and it pretty much ruins everything. We have aprons. We even have aprons that say knock on wood custom, but for some reason we don't use them. So please understand that you definitely want to monitor that. We also have an electrical cable, like an extension cord that's connected permanently to our heat gun.
Our Wagner.
A Wagner heat gun. So make sure that you are watching where you drag your stuff. Is it okay on the floor? You can chip it up with just a flat blade and like a scraper, like a bladed scraper. I don't know what you call those things. So hopefully that answers your question. Michael U.S. said, or with pictures is the best things. I don't know how to answer that. Hopefully I was able to answer it anyways. Don't step in it because there's like footprints leading out of my shop.
What if he means as a finish for the flooring?
Oh, is it good for the flooring? The epoxy is made for flooring.
Yeah.
We just don't do that.
No.
Three. Is that extra clear resin cypress?
Extra clear.
Awesome. That actually had an amber tint to it.
Yeah.
So if you saw that, it was a little bit different. It had an amber tint. You can get clear. The amber tint sometimes just allows you to have a little bit of different coloration in your grain patterning. Hopefully that answers that as well. Andy Klicka, do you have any 300-year-old leftover logs from the bottom of the Great Lakes rescued from scuba divers near, say, Armada, Ontario? That's a very specific request. I feel like maybe you have 300-year-old logs from a lake. I'm not really sure. But we don't. I don't even know that Oklahoma's been a state.
I don't think we have
long?
the right environment to preserve
Yeah.
logs on the bottom. I don't know.
Yeah, we have a lot of lakes, and I'm sure there's a lot of trees down there. And I'm scuba dive qualified, so maybe we can pull one up later. Michael, sorry, I seen with epoxy is the best on floors, and I need to finish a floor with. look it up, man. You can roll it on, and it's fantastic. When I go back and fix my garage where all the epoxy is, I'm gonna epoxy over it. And you can find those kits at Lowe's. Again, that's not something that we do, but there's a lot of tutorials on that. So hopefully you're able to find that and make it happen. Paul, you asked or stated, I'm making my first river glass table. I'm having trouble filling the grain, dimples, etc. Will the epoxy do that in one hit? I don't know about one hit, but it'll definitely do it. I would use like a scraper. What would you call that? A trowel, like a flat trowel. Yeah, and you can spread that out and you can fill in the dimples and the graining. It'll be fantastic. You can use coloration if you want. That's pretty simple. Glow in the dark, whatever your style calls for. By the way, the river glass tables, amazing.
Love them.
Yeah, Paul, if you can share that with us, we'd love to put it on our website and share it on our Facebook so everyone can see what you're talking about.
Clay says, "Nice work, fellas. Do you know of anyone around the Houston, Texas area that is open to educate us beginners on the work y'all are doing?" What's that? The Woodman, or that's the only guy in Texas I know.
Yeah,
The
I'm not really
YouTube
sure.
channel that we watch.
Honestly, if you have something specific, Clay, we can do it. I mean, we just walked through an entire epoxy pour, and we were able to just explain it step by step. And if there's something that we're missing, I mean, we'll go back over it. We want to share all of our knowledge and
just
empty our
send us
cups.
ideas of videos or live things that you want to see done, and we'll put something together for you guys.
Fazal and George, you guys are all saying hi, and I really appreciate that. It's so cool to see that we're helping people on a global level. So it's not just a situation where we're spreading our knowledge state to state or city to city. We're actually reaching out to people in Crete and West Africa. We have a lot of fantastic viewers, and I appreciate that.
Ochre pine.
Pine. Neither one. That's pecan. It's pretty close. When it's finished, it has a much more red color. So
Pecan or the black walnut? Which one is he asking about?
Oh, there's two very different ones there. There is a black walnut and there is a pecan. We can go back over there. I've got a little bit of charge on this phone. I'm going to answer some other questions real quick. What mostly clients ask to produce what type of projects? Like, what are our biggest projects?
Shelves, sofa tables, and tabletops.
Yeah, I mean, we stick specifically with making tops. We will find that Australia, I love it. We find that people just are passionate about having something different that you don't get from a granite store. So we've done a lot of things. We do countertops, we do island tops, we do writing desks, we do couch tables. I mean, it's kind of endless when you think about it. All you're doing is you're making a top, you know, whether it's for a shelf or for a giant island in a kitchen. So all of those things are something that we function with and we do. Had got them full grain, water stained, fully preserved, fresh water close to freezing. Britain has lost some comeback in the 1800s. Andy, you're the one that asked about the old wood in the big pond, right? Yeah. Andy, man, if you get a hold of that stuff, that's
gold in the
That's
wood.
a story, right? That's what we want to do, is we want to preserve that story. So make sure you're using that. Just conserve and utilize that as you need. UK, popping into the UK. I love it.
Yeah,
and then Chris and Nikki, Australia, love you guys.
Shout out.
Clay, again, came in late. Looking forward to seeing more on this. Man, if you have any questions, go back and look this over. Hopefully we've answered some stuff.
You want to go show them?
Yeah. I'm going to unplug. We're going to switch over so you guys don't have to look at me. So we were talking about different finishes. This is a pecan. Honestly, you're going to find that woods look different colors no matter what. Well, that was a nice little 3D situation going on. This is the top side. Earlier, we went over how to fill voids and inclusions.
Yeah, be sure to go back and watch.
Yeah, there's a lot of info on there. Hopefully you guys saw some of that. This is a walnut with finish. Again, it changes crazy. Nice tree, has nice waves.
Which tree has nice waves? I think you're talking about grain. As far as graining patterns go, I'm a big fan of walnut. I'm sorry, pecan. Thank you, Michael. We will never do that again. The pecan tree, the pecan. Pecan. I can't get out of the light here. But we really like walnut for its amazing grain. You didn't finish the answer about cost to the customer of the project. Oh, did you want like a specific cost, David? I don't really know how to answer that. I mean, mine is telling you what we charge, and I don't think that's fair to anybody in their viewer base. If that's something that you want to get offline with, we can. It's all very unique. Each slab is going to cost different. The materials are going to cost different. Again, we try to keep that as minimal as possible. So, I mean, I've seen these wood slabs on the internet go for $1,200, $1,500, $2,000. We think that's a little crazy. That's why we like to control everything as far as that stuff being harvested by us, that stuff being kilned by us. So when it comes down to it, our bottom line is a lot less expensive than maybe some of the other people. But again, if you want to get offline about that, we can help you with your business and trying to analyze what your costs would be. I'd say on an average countertop, at minimum, you're probably looking at $1,200 or more.
This is the black walnut, by the way.
This is black walnut.
Very dominant features.
And then we were just asked, do you have an olive tree here? I don't think so. I really don't. I don't know the geographical locations of olive trees, but I know that, I think you said you were in Crete, so it might be something that is very accessible to you. But for us, we're right next to the second largest producer of black walnut. So we can find black walnut readily, which is amazing. We were asked by Tyler, what type of kiln do you use? We have a Nile system kiln. It's a dehumidification kiln. I like it. I mean, you can use a solar kiln. You can also go the route of a vacuum kiln. All of them have their benefits. All of them have their pros and cons. For dehumidification, it's pretty positive. For time, etc. So if you're looking to build a kiln, there's a lot of options, and we can talk about that again on maybe a later video. So again, this is black walnut. And this is pecan. Sorry, I want to make sure I say this right. Pecan.
Pecan.
And you can see in this epoxy, the coloration changes quite a lot. It goes into a reddish color. Looks like glass. Michael, it does. I mean, it's basically liquid glass. All right. We don't have a lot more questions coming in, and we're going to close it out today. You guys have been amazing. I appreciate every one of you that... Oh, I lie. We have one more question. Mitch, we're going to take your question. We're going to answer it. Live edge is one of probably the biggest questions I get, because I tell people we deal with live edge wood, and they're like, live edge, it's crazy. So it's the natural organic edge that's produced when you mill a log. Most of the time, you've probably seen dimensional lumber, which means that it's squared on 4 sides, or S4S, squared 4 sides. We don't like to do that. We actually prefer to keep that natural live edge. It is something that kind of makes everything unique. Personally, we deal with organically unique medium. So every tree that we slice, every slab that we have is going to be unique and different. And that's something that we pride ourselves on. So we like to keep that natural live edge if we can. That's kind of our wheelhouse. And I can show that to you guys right now. I'm going to show it to you on a big... I'm going to show it to you on a bigger piece, just so it's a little more visible. So normally, this would be squared out. Does that make sense? It'd be flat edge, flat edge, flat edge. But we want to be unique and a little different.
It's the shape of the tree.
So this is a natural edge. All we did is a bark removal. Pretty straightforward. And we actually are going to release a how-to video on the way we remove the bark, the way we utilize our tools, which are pretty simple. And we're able to do that without wasting a lot of money. It's to us, we remove the bark almost no matter what. The bark is, when the tree's alive, it is basically the most dead portion of that tree. So even if we finished it with the bark on, most likely we're going to lose it. Over time, this is just something that we know. It falls off and it becomes a problem. My dog loves to eat it. So if you've got like a finish on your bark, they eat it, they may get sick. So we just take all the time and we remove it. We like it. It provides a nice natural edge. Brian Jones, man, we just appreciate you tuning in. If you missed all this, you can, of course, go back and you can check it out. Or we're going to be shooting these more frequently just so we can give you guys some more information. If you have specific questions, please ask. And if you found this helpful, I know we got a lot of questions on here, but if you found this helpful, someone else is going to find it helpful too. So go ahead and like it, share it, send it to your friends, whatever it might be. I'm going to answer a few more questions, so stay live with us. Do you sand between coats? I'm not 100% sure what we're asking about. This is a waterlocks finish, and you were talking maybe about the epoxy that we looked at earlier. Epoxy, I typically don't sand in between coats. You can just pour it on top of each other as long as it's all flat and you don't have any issues. As far as waterlocks, you can sand after the first or second coat with a real light 220, 300, and you'll find that it produces a real nice aesthetically pleasing finish coat. And then, of course, when we finish with our final coat, we'll go back over it with steel wool 0000, and then we use a paste wax to bring it to a natural luster. And Thomas, you're going to be my last question. Do you harvest black walnut trees for your work? Yes. I love it. Joel, who's the other guy over here, he loves, that's like his passion. I love to make stuff, and he loves to go out and harvest trees and be a part of that process. And man, it's so nice to be able to watch this tree come down. You know where it came from. You get the owner's history on it. And then you get to bring it back, mill it, dry it, and then turn it into a beautiful piece that's going to go into someone's home. There's nothing more satisfying than that, in my opinion. And the quality control's there. I know that we made it. We crafted it from start to finish. So that's something that we take pride on at Knock on Wood Custom. You use much oak. Love an oak grain. Absolutely. As a white wood, oak is amazing. You get some different oaks. We also like elm and red elm. Possible to see the kiln. The kiln actually isn't on site, Jeremy. We have a kiln at another location. I don't have it here, and I'm so sorry. We will actually be producing a build probably next year. We're going to be doing a 40-foot container build. So it's going to be a full kiln with a Nile system and a track system for carts. So we're going to walk through that so everybody that wants to can see how to produce a kiln. Hopefully that'll be helpful for you guys as well, just so you can understand the specs. After this, if you guys need anything,
feel free to email us at info@knockonwoodcustom.com.
Message us on Facebook.
Yep. Check out our growing YouTube. There's not a lot on there now, but we're going to be adding it. We really want to hear your feedback. So if you have specific questions we can answer or make a video over it, let us help you, and we can mentor and empty our knowledge cup so you guys don't have to go through the same mistakes we do. You don't have to spend the extra money. You know what tools are going to work best. Maybe we can save you a couple steps in experimenting.
Thanks,
Outside
guys.
of that, we appreciate you guys. Keep the hustle on and stay safe in your shop.